Thank you all for coming to my talk. Thanks for inviting me over. Um, uh, I'm going to talk about httpxyz, but first a little bit about me. My name is Michiel Beijen, as said. I'm a software developer. I work in Leiden at Samotics. We do IoT stuff with big industrial pumps. It's quite interesting. And I'm also the organizer of the Python Leiden. Python Leiden is a local meetup. We have meetups every 2 months. There are a couple of regulars at the Python Leiden meetup who are on the first row, who also gave a talk here today, which I think is quite nice. Thank you for supporting me. Um, okay, my talk today all started here. I like to write code. I like to write software. I like it a lot, but it's all behind the desk and quite static. So I also have a kayak. I live in Leiden. We have beautiful canals. You saw it on the first slide already. Sometimes I like to take a kayaking trip in the evening just to relax. And sometimes during the kayaking trip, such as this one night in 2023, I also listen to a podcast. And in this particular night, I was listening to the Code Recursive podcast, which I can highly recommend. It's by a Canadian who interviews people that have stories to tell. And this guy is Jean Collet. It's a French guy trained as an economist who was a project manager for a big French company, and he wasn't really enjoying it. And he taught himself to program a little bit to make his project management easier. I don't know what he did. And then he liked the programming more than he liked the project management. And then in his evenings, he decided to do some more programming just for fun. And then he started investigating compression mechanisms, compression algorithms. And he created his own, and he submitted it to some online forum he found where other compression people shared code. And it turned out that his particular compression algorithm was actually very, very good. It was better than most people wrote on that forum, and he was not a trained computer scientist. This compression algorithm finally got released. It's LZ4. It became very popular. It was used, for instance, in Sony PlayStation for compressing software on their disks so they could fit more data. And then afterwards, he got more or less talent scouted by Facebook, who hired him. He moved from France to Silicon Valley, and he created, while at Facebook, Z Standard. And this podcast episode is about this journey, and I can recommend it, but I want to talk about Z Standard because Z Standard itself is really quite interesting, and also it made quite a big journey. It was released in 2016. A year later, it was already added to the Linux kernel, where it can compress file systems, such as virtualfs, squashfs files, stuff like that. In 2018, Canonical, the makers of Ubuntu, added it to .deps as a compression mechanism, and Fedora, Red Hat, added it to RPM. 2 years later, it got added to the .zip format, because .zip files look all the same. They have the same extension, but internally they can have different compression algorithms. So since 2020, Z Standard is one of the official compression algorithms that you can use in the zip file format. Then 3 years later, it got added to Windows Explorer in Windows 11, so you can right-click and use Z Standard in your zip files. And then in 2024, Chrome and Firefox added it to the browser. And then in 2025, which was just last year, it got added to Python in the standard library. So if you have Python 3.14, which is the latest one as of this moment, then there is actually Z standard compression in Python, which I think is all great. And Z standard has interesting properties. It compresses slightly better than the existing gzip most of the time. And also you can tune it to be even a little bit more efficient, but it's not like hugely more efficient, but it's better. And it uses significantly less CPU time while doing so. So this is very interesting if you have large amounts of data that you need to compress, such as your server, which might generate lots of data, then it uses less CPU while applying Z standard compression, which is really, really nice. So I thought this was quite interesting, right? But also, I was at the previous employer at the time, and there we had an API integration that was using Python requests. Give me hands, who of you is using requests? Almost everybody. Give me hands, who of you is using httpx? Or YZ? A little bit less people. Well, so requests is like the default HTTP library, but it's not core Python, right? So you still have to pip install requests, but it's very standard. And httpx is really similar. They were inspired by the API design of requests, so it still looks much the same. You can typically just cut and paste, find and replace request by httpx, and then it will just work. But it has some benefits, such as that you can use HTTP2, which is cool. I will go into why it's cool later, but trust me, it's cool. And also it can do async. And httpx is also quite popular. It's a top 100 PyPi package. So on the Python package index, it's one of the top 100 most popular packages. It is used by a lot of modules that implement an API, and they use then httpx to do the HTTP requests. And it has async support. Request doesn't have async support, httpx does. So I made this code change because we had an API that wasn't really performant. I rewrote it using httpx. It was super fast. I was happy. My boss was super happy. So everybody's happy, right? So then I got an idea. It was, can we add Z standard compression support, which I listened to the podcast, to httpx? Because httpx does also support compression, but it only does the gzip one. So I created a pull request adding this. And this was work by me, but it's not that I invented everything myself. I was using the standard Z standard Python library, which is created by the group at Facebook. And also I looked at how YOLO 3, which already supported Z standard decoding, did it, and I more or less mimicked their implementation, and I added it to httpx. So I made this pull request. We got some questions back. I got some questions back from the maintainer. Are there any signs that you can already try this on? But well, this was like early 2024. There was not a lot. There was just browser support appearing. Was not even in most browsers at this point. So I added some example domains, just Instagram.com and Facebook, of course, because they invented it more or less. And then I got really nice feedback, and it got merged, and I was super happy and really proud. And then some people asked, well, so this is like here, March 21st, 2024, and then in August, people started asking, hey, this is a real nice feature, but it's still unreleased. When will we actually get the release? Because my pull request was merged, but there was never a new version of httpx. And then the maintainer said, well, would you want to create a release PR? Because I don't know. And then I created a new release PR, and we got a release. And all was fine with the world. Until it wasn't, because what happened? As I said, it was quite early days when I merged this for Z standard in browsers and also in web service, because, well, what's the point of having support in your web server if there are no clients? Well, then, like a couple of months later, this person was complaining, about a bug where they wanted to get something from Netflix.com, which used Z standard at this point, and then they got an error. And this was because they had, like, it's a technical detail in Z standard for how you can do compression. On Facebook.com, this problem doesn't exist. On Netflix.com, which uses a slightly different implementation, it broke. So I was not happy, and of course I created a bug fix. But this was never adopted. People started asking, can you please get a release with this fix out, because it's really nasty. And then I replied, I said, well, I am not a maintainer of this module. I can only submit the bug fix, but it's up to them to merge it and to release the package to the internet, right? And then also, this happened. Here, you see, an owner of this repository has limited the ability to comment to users that are collaborators. So this pull request was still open, and nobody could ever add, hey, can we please get a new release, please, because it's broken. And then this happened. They turned off access to all issues and discussions on the whole repository, which was not great, because it's a pretty high-profile HTTP package that actually has some issues, and nobody can discuss or whatever or do anything with it anymore. But the interesting part is, it's not the first time that this happened, because in 2025, so more or less a year before that it happened in httpx, the very same maintainer for a different project, which is a Django REST framework, which is also pretty popular, also turned off discussions there. And then I asked, well, it's nice that you turn it off, but in the contributing it says that you need to discuss stuff in the discussions, and now you turned off the discussion. So should we then at least fix that or so? So then I actually went ahead, made a commit that says discussions are all for whatever, and it was strange, right? And I got some passive-aggressive comments about me not being constructive, or I don't know. And then there's another project, because they also made mkdocs, which is a really nice way to publish your documentation website if you're using a Python project or something like that. And somebody wrote an article about this in March, so also pretty recently, about how mkdocs got into problems because it was no longer there was a maintainer, new maintainer, but they got into a fight with the old maintainer. It was like lots of drama. Highly recommend if you want to have something to read on the way back from Groningen to wherever, or maybe just to home. Anyway, and then there's also the funny thing, which is that their organization is called Encode, and they pride themselves on doing like open source in a maintainable way, in a way that is for the future or something like that. And they have sponsors. So they used to have like lots of sponsors, more than 200 are past sponsors, or 200 are past, and then there are still current sponsors. But they have sponsors, but then they no longer make new versions of the software, which is kind of weird, right? The last release of httpx now was in 2024, and it has my broken bug, right? There's also this 1.0 that never happened, which is also kind of weird. Here in end of 2024, the maintainer calls for a talk to discuss with all the people that are involved of a 1.0 version of httpx and what features it should have and what the requirements should be and stuff like that. But the 1.0 release, if you look back into the history of the code, already in 2019 in the README it says, this is httpx, it's very nice. We are planning on a 1.0 release very soon. And if you look at the README now, it has been removed, but the 1.0 was really already for a long time in the planning. And also, if you look, this is Wayback Machine, because it's also been removed from the GitHub repository, but there used to be, up until March, HTTP Next as a separate code repository on their GitHub. And also, this, oh, it's still, I don't know why the, yeah, it looks great. This is encode.io/httpnext is still up, I think, today. This is the documentation for the pre-release for what httpx 1.0 should be. And you can actually install it by using this pip command. The funny thing is, there's a little bit scope creep going on, because they also include a server now, which, okay. And also, they have here a httpx, which does all the asynchronous stuff. So you have to import a httpx to get async, and the regular httpx will not have async. So if you were using httpx with async, then your code is now broken on the 1.0. And also on this website that I just showed you is this text. It says it's currently private, the repository. If you want to work on this and get paid, please get in touch or something like that. And also, it's not yet licensed for reuse, so it's no longer open source or so. Which I think they can do whatever they want, right? But also, at the same time, this is a very public, heavily used package. This is Simon Willison, who is one of the founders or really early contributors to Django. He's a real nice guy. Apparently he was on the 1.0 talk. He was not really happy with what they discussed there. He says, this could be a really nasty breaking change. I don't really like this. Whatever. This is his concerns. This is Anthropic SDK. They pinned httpx to be less than 1, because in 1 it will break, right? So they don't really like this. But Anthropic SDK actually is using httpx. This is OpenAI Python. It has the same version pin for httpx. They're also using httpx. And then, when I started looking, there are actually a lot of people that have very long discussions on, this is the OpenAI issue list, but there's also very long discussions going on in httpx about performance issues in the library. If you start using it like for sending a couple of requests, it's fine, but if you send lots of requests, there are like people complaining. They say, hey, I have the expensive package for OpenAI, but I cannot get more than so many requests per second. What's up? And then it turns out to be that it's not OpenAI, it's the HTTP library that they're using. This one. There's a discussion on Reddit. Anybody knows what's up with HTTPX, because it seems weird, right? And all of the time, Z standard, my contribution was still broken, right? So eventually I decided to do this. This is for httpxyz. It is a fork of httpx. So we took all the source code, we renamed it, and it's now httpxyz. And I also, during all this while, I sent the maintainer a couple of emails, and I didn't get response on any of them until the point where I mentioned that I said, well, it's been broken so long, I really want to have something that just works. I might make a fork. And then I got a reply, and the reply said, oh yeah, I think you are allowed to do that considering the software license or so. And then I did it. I wrote a blog post about it on my blog. It got lots of views. I submitted it to Hacker News. It was viral on Hacker News, which was, I guess, nice. It is drop incompatible. We merged many of the existing PRs that were like still around on httpx. Our version has much better performance, especially in some places, and it has lots fewer bugs. We do have working Z standard. It's API compatible. You can do import httpxyz as httpx and then use your code as usual. We have more maintainers, so it's not just me. I do this with friends, and we're busy with onboarding a third maintainer, so we want to have continuity on the project. We added shims and import tricks, so you can, even if you would use httpx, but you use a module that itself imports httpx, you understand, then it will still work. This is also what the popular image processing library PIL does, or Pillow actually, which replaces PIL. And we have a dedicated page that is about compatibility for if you want to try our software and migrate your own code base. Then we have a bunch of benchmarks. So most of the performance problems actually didn't turn out to be in httpx. They are in HTTP core, which is a module by the same maintainer that also didn't have much releases that we also ended up needing to fork. You see here, async support is like 5 times faster in HTTP core. Synchronous is also faster, but not by that much, but still significant. And then here, there's also stuff with memory, where we are, if you have a large payload and you need to send it, then previously the software would chunk it. It would read small chunks from your large object, but it would read the same complete object every time and then slice a little piece off instead of just using a smarter mechanism. So it used extreme amount of memory. So our code, if you have 16 megabytes of data to upload, is like 80 times faster. I don't know, it's really amazing that you can be such a popular package and then still have these issues. And to some extent, I also think, I don't know, it might be that people are using HTTPX and think, hey, my project is okay, but it's kind of slow, let's rewrite it in Rust. And then it turns out that the problem is not really the Python, but it's these kinds of problems, right? Oh yes, and there was also this issue with connection pool that we also fixed. Well, lots of small improvements that really add up, especially if you have like high performance code or a client that makes lots of requests. Then I want to talk about how to make use of how to even get proper performance, which is one of the tricks that I needed to use in the rewrite of the old code base at my previous employer. It's using a client. And because this is, so you can do this, right? You can write import httpxyz and then use get requests, and that works. But it's not super great. If you use a client, then we can do all kinds of smart stuff that gets you more performance. So this is really highly recommended. And the funny thing is, because it's inspired by the same, this still works if you use requests. If you use requests, you should also use a session, it's called there, but it's the same mechanism, and you should definitely use this because you get more performance. This is because then what we can do is all kinds of cool technical tricks that are in the HTTP protocol, such as we have connection pools. You can open a TCP connection and leave it open for the next request to reuse the TCP connection. We don't need to do DNS lookups for the second request if it's the same host. If there is HTTPS, which obviously all the web is using HTTPS nowadays, we no longer have to reperform TLS handshake, so it will be much faster, much quicker. The socket reuse I already discussed. We can do, if you're using HTTP2, which you really should, then you can use request pipelining, which is super awesome. And if you're using HTTP2, we can do header compression. So this is if you're using HTTP 1.1, which is what request does. Then if you use a client, you can use connection keep alive. So what this does is if you send the first request, so get index.html, you open the connection, say get index.html, then you get it back, then you close the connection. Then you say get style.css, and then you get style.css, new SSL handshake, new TCP connection, everything. Then you get it back. Then you say get some JavaScript, and then you get it, and then close. But if you use a client, such as your browser would do, but also if you have Python code that makes a lot of requests to the same API, you will definitely want to use this. Then you can just open the TCP, handshake, DNS, everything one time, do multiple connects, and then the session will keep track of the TCP socket. Also, if you would keep it around for a couple of minutes and the server would close the connection, the client will automatically do the handshake again if needed. So this is automatic for you, and it makes your code much, much more performant. This is HTTP 1.1. So this is also what requests can do. But if you use HTTP2, which you definitely should, did I say this already? Yes. Then I had Cloud Code make this one for me. It looks a little bit sucky, but I couldn't find a proper one, and I am not so great at drawing myself. Claude also isn't great at drawing, but well, it's something. So you can do multiplexing, because here with Keep Alive, you have request A that ends in response A, and then you can do request B, and you get response B, and so forth. But with multiplexing, you have one open connection, and then you can send different parts of the get commands or the post or whatever, all at the same time over the same TCP socket, and then you get them back as streams. And this is really useful. This is especially useful if you have, for instance, some calls, such as JSON documents that are generated by the server that take longer time to generate, because then you can, over the same connection, also perform other requests, and otherwise you would have what is called head-of-line blocking. So you have to wait for the long request to be done before you can send the new one, and here you can do it all on the same connection, which is super performant. For HTTP2 in httpxyz, you have to install an extra. So you do uv add and then specify the extra. And then also in your client, you have to specify HTTP2 equals true. And then you can do a GET request, and then it will be using HTTP2. For this to work, you also have to have support on your server. So if you run your own server, or even if you run like AWS API Gateway or something like that, not always HTTP2, even in 2026, is enabled by default. Go check your settings, see what you need to do to make it work. httpxyz also has a command line interface. You can install it like this with UV. If you're using UV, you should. And then you can use this on the command line to connect. Then you see the result in this case. So it works like this. You specify that you want to have HTTP2. If the host doesn't do HTTP2, then you still get a 1.1 response. But if it does, then you will get a HTTP2 response. In this case, I also added the Z standard extra, which means that we will send accept encoding Z standard to the backend, and the backend in this case replies with accept content encoding Z standard. So they gave Z standard compressed encoding back. But also Z standard support is definitely not always on your servers. Then I want to show this one, which is a very nice thing that is supported by httpx. You can have custom auth clients. I will just show it like very briefly because of the time, but it's all in the documentation. With the custom auth class, you can say I want to get a token, and the token I use to update my request header with authorization. And then here's my refresh flow, and this is my fetch token. And then you can create a new client. Where's the client? Oh, I'm sorry, I have to scroll here. Here. Here's refresh flow, and then you can define a client here. And you say auth is my auth client, and then you can do a get call. And this is the first thing that actually runs. It runs the client, then the client checks, do I already have auth? It doesn't have auth, so it goes to the code at the top where it gets the token, and then it performs the request. If this request would fail with authentication required because your token expired after whatever minutes or something, then it will automatically refresh the token for you and it will do the call again. So this is a very nice way with custom auth to have a very performant, easy to read, easy to maintain client. And this is the same thing, but then using OAuth. This is all in the documentation, custom auth clients. I would highly recommend this. So for httpxyz, what are the goals? Move a little bit faster than not having releases and not break stuff. We want stability, we want the releases, we want not breaking stuff, we want not ignoring actual issues. We have more than one maintainer, as I said. We also understand that you cannot trust just two random persons making new software for a highly used piece of code. So that's a problem. We'll have to build trust over time to still keep being there. But also on the other hand, if you try to move to our software and you want to go back to httpx because they see the light of day and continue and we fizzle out, could happen, I don't know. Then you can switch easily because the API is like the same. We already have much faster import time. I didn't even show that. We have much better performance. I did show that, especially if you're using many requests or posts with larger payloads. I already got...
You're out of time.
Out of time?
Yeah, maybe one slide still.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yes, it's half an hour. Yeah. Oh. Okay, good. Thank you. We are on Codeberg. We need you to make us a success. And then thank you so much.